Hey everyone, it's Nightharo here, and today I've got a trash build for you. Please, someone make a meme out of this thumbnail, or if you can, or if you got a funny comment about all my builds being trash builds or something like that, please drop it in the comments below. I'm not going to be offended. I just think I'll think it's hilarious. So let's do that. That'll be fun. So I've been getting a lot of questions about how to set up a trash build, what to do, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm finally got a build guide for you. Okay, so let's talk about skills to begin with here. So first off, on your back bar, what you're going to have is Wall of Elements with a Maelstrom Inferno staff, Refreshing Path, Proximity Detonation, our Shade, and then Channeled Acceleration. On our front bar, we're going to have Whirling Blades, Lotus Fan, which is a morph of Teleport Strike, Sap Essence, our Merciless Resolve, and then Concealed Weapon. So the idea with a trash build here is that you want to be able to pre-buff as many abilities before you actually enter combat as you can, because if everybody has a trash setup when you're in a trial, everything will die, and even in dungeons, everything will die so fast that you'll hardly get a chance to use your skills. So if you have a skill that has like a 20-second duration, chances are that you're not even going to get the full duration out of that before everything is dead. Now, that will probably not, I just want to point out, that will not be the experience for most of the people probably watching this video, because most people don't have trash setups in my experience. And so you might be in a situation where your trash pulls last for 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. You know, obviously if half the group dies and you got to do a res prog and stuff like that, they can go very long. But the idea is that typically if everybody has one, they go very quickly. So there will be some changes that you might need to make to this build. So your mileage might vary a little bit as far as how things go for you. I'll talk about that towards the end. But the idea here is we're putting skills on our bar that we can precast as much as possible. So that's why we use Channeled Acceleration instead of using something like Barb Trap, because Channeled Acceleration, we can pre-buff it way early, and it lasts for like a full minute, so we're not even going to have to worry about it recasting it at all during any trash pull, pretty much no matter what. After that, we're going to do our Merciless Resolve. Also has a 40-second duration. We want to leave the bow proc up and just use it to increase our weapon and spell damage. I will also note that if you're a Stamina Blade, you can use all the stamina skills with this, with like one exception, and that's totally fine. So if you've got the other morph of Merciless Resolve, I forget what it's called, then that's totally fine as well. It's not a big deal. Just leave it. The only thing that will matter is if you don't have enough Magicka to kind of like precast everything. But I think you probably should. So, and then next up is the Proximity Detonation. So the reason we use this is the same deal. We cast this. It takes 8 seconds before it blows up, so we can cast it way before the pull actually starts, and then it'll go off in the middle of a pull. And then also our Shade, I don't know if I mentioned that, that's the same situation where you can precast this. It has a 22-second duration, so it's going to last for a very long time. So what we do before a pull is we do our Channeled Acceleration, Merciless Resolve, our Shade, and then Proxy Detonation just before the pull, or a little bit before the pull. Then at 2, when our tank counts in, saying 3, 2, 1, at 2, we're going to go ahead and drop our Mage's Guild Ultimate, Shooting Star. The reason we're using this is because it's going to give us ultimate back, and it also does quite a bit of damage. You could also use a Destro Staff ultimate. That would be just fine as well if you don't have Mage's Guild. Like, you don't need to go level Mage's Guild for this. Like, sure, maybe that might be a good idea, but like, that skill line is so hard to level that don't do it for this. So Destro Staff Ultimate is just as good. Works. I mean, it's different, but it's gonna work just fine. Don't stress it. You know, you could also use Soul Tether, which is our Nightblade ability, and that's a situation where all these, you see that I'm precasting this, like I'm casting these before the tank even pulls. In reality, it depending on how fast or slow your tanks are to stack adds, it might be better to wait, let them get everything stacked, and actually cast your ultimate a little bit later. So in that case, instead of casting your ultimate right before you pull, you would actually use your Wall of Elements and Refreshing Path in the area that the adds are going to be in, and then when they're almost there, go ahead and use your Shooting Star, because it takes a couple seconds for it to go off. Same thing, wait till they get stacked, then use Soul Tether. Same thing with a Destro ult. So yeah, not too much really needs to be done there. Now, once we've got everything down, so we've either, you'll see what I do here, where I precast the Destro ult or Mage's Guild ult, Shooting Star, and then I Teleport Strike in on my front bar. You can see the Shooting Star hits. I switch to the back bar. I put down Path. I put down Wall of Elements. The reason we're putting down our Path is because we're going to use our Concealed Weapon to give us an extra 10% damage on everything we do. So that's the reason we're using our Path. Not and it's not really just for primarily for the damage that the path is doing. It's for the buff as well. And then for our wall of elements, we're trying to proc our enchants and also take advantage of having a maelstrom back bar. And the reason we're using Lotus Fan, besides the fact that it's a magic damage ability, is because this is the best and kind of the only. It's not exactly the only, but it's really the only way to get minor vulnerability in an AOE. And Nightblades are the only ones who can do it. And again, you can use this on a stamina build just fine if you have the gear and you can swap it out. And if you don't want to, and you're on a stamina build and you got a two-hander, you can still use charge. The two-handed charge is just fine. I typically wouldn't use cleave because you need to cast it several times to get the full duration out of it. And if the pull goes fairly quickly, then I don't think that cleave is really going to do what you want it to. It's usually not as good on a little bit shorter pulls, but it would be just fine if you wanted to, and you already have it. That's totally fine. Another downside of that, though, is that's another skill you're going to be casting as a dot during the middle of a pull, and that has potential, if your pulls are fast, to reduce your damage done. So just keep that in mind. After that, we just switch back to our front bar and we just spam Sap Essence until we're out of Magicka. And I literally mean that. Sap Essence is great for a Nightblade and for your group, because not only does it do damage, it also heals you and it heals all your allies around you. So some of the trash pools can be a little hard to heal through, honestly. And if you've got maybe a new tank, so the healer's having to focus the tank, maybe the healer's new, and they don't have all their hots down or whatever, you can really help the group out and help keep everybody alive during trash pools. And then once you run out of magic, or if you're getting close to running out of Magicka, then what you're going to do is you're going to switch and you're going to use your Whirling Blades. Now, the cool thing about Whirling Blades, too, the other thing you can swap to it is because it has a built-in execute. All right, so for gear, let's go ahead and talk about it. So we do have a bunch of Magicka damage abilities, like we just said, and so what we're going to use is War Maiden. War Maiden gives you 600 spell damage towards your magic damage abilities, and you don't have to proc it, you don't have to do anything else. So pretty huge, pretty awesome. And then the other set we're going to use is Mechanical Acuity. Oh, I'm sorry. And War Maiden drops Overland in Vardenfell. So you can get it. Dropping Overland means that people can collect it and then sell it at vendors, which you can find to some extent. It's a decent set. Templars can use it as well. And so it's not a bad set. And so you can usually find it, though, for fairly cheap. The other thing is you can go farm it for very easily and very cheaply too, if you want to do that. Although it's probably easiest, honestly, to just go buy it. And you can get purple jewelry that drops Overland, and so you don't have to upgrade it, and that can save you a ton of money. So keep that in mind. But, be mindful of prices. I'm sure people will try to price gouge you. You can go, typically jewelry drops from daily quests, like repeatable quests in Vardenfell area. I personally really like the Ashlander quests, both because of the flavor and also because of the motifs you can get. You can get the Ashlander style, which I thought was super cool and kind of reminded me like of something you would see in Star Wars, like Tatooine or something like that, some sort of desert planet. But I thought they were kind of cool, and I actually keep one of my Nightblades in that set usually. But yeah, War Maiden is a great set. You can use it on your body or jewelry. Again, I recommend jewelry because you can buy or farm the jewelry for relatively cheap. It should cost you, 5, 10, maybe 20K at the most for like a purple jewelry. I'm not really sure. I haven't kept up with what prices are. But if it's too much and you think it's too much, you can just go farm it yourself, like I said. And if I'm wrong, I don't do a ton of overlands. If I'm wrong about the jewelry, or if there's other places you can get it, can someone do me a favor and put that in the comments down below, and I'll pin it so everybody else can see. I would really appreciate that. Just with everything else I'm doing, I don't have time to go test it out and figure out where it drops from. And then the other set, Mechanical Acuity, that I'm recommending is just a crafted set. So you can make this in medium if you want. That's probably the best damage for your group. That's what I would do even if you're on a Magicka build. And so you can do 5-piece medium and then just do a monster set. Any kind of AOE monster set that is working well right now, you could leave on Zon if that's part of your main setup. You could also use something like Stormfist. Just any AOE setup that you think that you like or is doing a lot of damage is totally fine here. If you're doing solo content, a lot of people like Grothdar. Just because it's centered on you and it moves with you, and that can help whenever you're having a kite to avoid damage and do other stuff. So if you're using this build as like an overland or as like a grinding build or something like that, you might consider that. Just keep that in mind. But for trials, dungeons, and organized content, I think Storm Fist is going to work just as well for you. If you want and you want to keep on Kilt or some other mythic, you can totally do that as well. You just drop the monster set and just go with like a 1-piece crit or 1-piece penetration. Either is fine. If you're doing solo content, penetration is probably going to be better. And if you're doing group content, something like Slime Crawl, which has the highest 1-piece crit in the game, you could use that instead. A shoulder or head, it doesn't really matter. And that's the build. That's the setup for you. Now, if you get to the point where you are ready for a little bit better gear, or you want to go a little bit more intense with your trash setup, I would say one of the first things you could do is swap out like Soul Zan is a really good set. It drops some Rock Grove. You don't need Perfected. You don't need you don't need to go run on Vet, but you could swap that out for your mechanical acuity. I would just note that I can't really test that set. Like, you really have to test that in content, because you need like something to have died, and then you need to collect its soul, and then it gives you the increased crit chance and crit damage. And so that's its own thing. And so that's a little bit hard to do as far as testing and stuff like that. The one time I killed a dummy to grab the soul to like test it out with the buff, it glitched out, or maybe it just doesn't work with dummies. I'm not sure. But I was like, yeah, I'm not killing another dummy. I was like, I'm not going to parse on another dummy for, a minute to get another soul to try this out. I just spent too much time on this already. So I was like, I'm bailing on it. But that's another good set. The other thing about that is that it has the 5% damage increase for dungeons and trials against all mobs. And that's significant. And that'll really help this build as well, in addition to just the 5-piece bonus being really good. So keep that in mind. And it's medium too. You can put it on your body just replace it and leave on the War Maiden. And if you want to do something besides War Maiden, you could do that too. It's totally fine. Whatever you find to work out, you could swap the gear and leave the skills the same, and you're not going to lose any damage. Like, these skills still work really well. I'll also note that I'm not trying to say this build is like the optimal build or anything like that. I'm just saying it's a good one. Okay. Again, like I said, I don't have the time and honestly the inclination to go try to test these out and whatever, experiment in content, see how you're doing, see what other people are doing, if they got a different build or different setup, and see where it goes. All right. And then the last thing here is actually CP, pretty important. So you don't have to change out your CP for this, but if you want to, here's what I think will be more optimal. So Exploiter, I would keep that on your bar. You should already have it on your main build anyways if you're in group content. You are expecting to have a Necromancer in group using their Scythe, or somebody else, but probably a Necromancer using their Scythe to proc off balance in an AOE. So just keep that in mind. If you don't have that, maybe swap something else out. Next up is Biting Aura, Wrathful Strikes, and then you can either go Fighting Finesse or Master at Arms. It kind of just depends on you and your group. If you're getting over the crit damage cap because your group is using Warhorns, maybe you have someone, a tank or something that is swapping out for Nunatek, for Major Brittle, something like that, you might be over on crit, in which case you want to drop, I believe, Fighting Finesse and then go with Master at Arms. I might be getting those backwards. I think that's right. So the idea here is that, Wrathful Strikes just gives you damage to everything. Then you want AoE and then direct damage, because our Sap Essence and our Whirling Blades are both our direct damage. So that's our spammable. And then obviously, like, everything that we're using is an AoE ability, so those are going to buff our damage the most. Again, there might be something that gives you a tiny bit more damage, a different CP, but I think this is a good place and a reasonable place to start. So it should work just fine for you. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about that stuff that I said I was going to mention. I mentioned at the beginning that I'll do the intro stuff kind of at the end. So I said 140k DPS. Well, what does that mean? What metric am I using, et cetera, et cetera? I just want to start off by acknowledging, like, as far as I know, there's no standardization for what to do with trash builds. So I'm gonna put forth one. So here I'm using just the 3 mil skeletons. Maybe the 6 mil is a better idea, but that's what I'm using. I'm using 4 of them. And then I am judging my DPS after 10 seconds, generally speaking. So whenever I pull up CMX, and I'm sorry for those of you on console who don't have this, what I'm looking for, you go to the squiggly line arrow here, and you can see this graph. What you're looking at is the red number. The red number is your current DPS. So it takes all the damage you've done up to that point from the beginning of the fight and then divides it by the number of seconds you've been in combat. And what I did is I was picking 10 seconds as a reasonable time for a trash pool to end, and then saying, okay, well, what does the most damage for in that 10-second window? So what does it say at 10 seconds or close to 10 seconds that my damage is? And so that's the number I'm looking at. I will note that if the skeletons get low on health and you have something that scales on low health enemies, and you do because your rings are going to be bloodthirsty, and then also if you have a spammable like Whirling Blades, that your damage is going to go up when they get to low health. So, I think it's best to start with full health or close to full health mobs. That way the damage looks the same, but again, kind of going into detail there. But my whole point in explaining this is that you can look at this, and if you find that your groups take 20 seconds on average to kill trash, or maybe they take longer, then you might want to swap up or do something different. You can just recast the abilities and keep them up like dots, like you would on a normal fight. I did that. It's not bad. It still works okay because they're all AOEs, and again, you're using a lot of your spammable, so it's going to be just fine. But you might find that, hey, you know what? If your trash pulls are consistently taking 20 seconds, there might be better things that you could do. There might be different setups. I'm not, I don't know how to cover all situations where if you go, oh, our trash pools take less than 10 seconds, or, oh, some of them take more. And it also depends on the content. Older content's going to go quicker. Newer content's going to take longer. But, I'm just trying to give you the information as in a short format here so that you can kind of make your own decisions. You can look at CMX and you can look at this number. And basically what I do is I go in and I aim for 10 seconds. And so I try to make sure that I'm actively casting skills for 10 seconds or a little bit longer just to be safe. And then I turn around and stop doing DPS. I typically run away from the dummy. You don't really need to do that, but and then the idea is that after 10 seconds or whenever you stop casting your active abilities, you're going to see that red line start to go down pretty quickly because you're not doing anything, but it still considers you in combat. So your total damage isn't moving very much besides the few dots you still have up, and then the time is getting larger. So you're dividing by a larger number, and so you just want to pick 10, 15, 20 seconds as your mark and see what build. You can go test out your own build and figure out what works for you. So that's how you can kind of make your own trash setup if you want, or figure out ways to tweak and make it yourself. Well, I think that's all I have for today. I'm so, like I said, I'm a bit under the weather, so I feel like I'm forgetting something. So drop it in the comments below if I'm missing something, or if you're like, hey, you didn't cover this, and I'll try to follow back up. Oh, and for anybody wondering about questions about food, stacking mag or stam, stacking weapon or spell damage, whatever, this is a modification of your current build. So just do whatever you were already doing. So if you were already stacking mag, if you were already stacking stamina, if you're already stacking weapon power, whatever, just keep doing that. You don't need to do anything different. If there is anything that is like suboptimal or Pareto optimal, it's not going to be that big of a difference. Just realize that. It's not going to make or break anything. The main thing is having the skills that you need and then having gear that does something. Because some sets don't proc in time or they take half the fight to a trash pool or most of a trash pool to build up stacks, or they're single target or something like that, and those are bad setups. You want something that's AOE, something that will proc quickly within the time period of the fight you're concerned with, and then hopefully finish its duration before the pool is over. And so that's why we have the sets and the kind of the setup we have. But anyways, I hope this was useful to you guys. I hope it was empowering so you guys can go out and make your own trash builds. That would be my goal, is that, to educate, it always is to educate people to be able to move into their own build and stuff like this. If you're interested in other builds, I've got a 125K-ish Nightblade video. I'm also working on a 1 bar build and then a simplified beginners like 2 bar build. And the idea would be that this would be for varying levels of beginners, and then they could move into more advanced stuff. And it actually uses some of the same sets that I'm using here, and it's pretty effective. So like the 2 bar, full build has like a 90K par, so not too bad. Anyways, guys, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.